live. Hi,
Oh.
everybody.
Oh.
Hi, Debbie L. How are you?
Meeting.
Debbie L. Debbie S. Is that Debbie S or Debbie L? Debbie S? Debbie S. Sorry, Debbie S. I thought you were Debbie L. Let me see. So let me go over here. Uh-oh. Oh, hold on a minute. Oh, boy. Hold on. Oh, you want to go out? Okay, I'll make a trip. Stop. Don't do that. Don't scratch the door. No, no. No, no.
Okay, I'm going to mute.
Sure. I certainly do that. What would you do here? Okay, you want to go out? Let's go. This door over here. I locked that one. You want to go out there? Roman, you coming this way? Okay, come on, you two. Sorry, I'll be right there. You guys can talk to the people in chat if you want. What did you do? What did you do over here? Okay, so I'll hang on there. I know, with the door here, Luke. I need your help for 1 second. I need you to hold this while I. What did you do with the box? Look, no, this. I'm live, but I'm over here. And then Sassy, but this. They knocked this off. They knocked this off the thing. Okay, Sassy.
I wonder if it's still snowing at Carolyn's.
Look, they knocked this off though. I gotta push this like, pull it in or something. Can you go down there and push that in? And I gotta push this. Push it towards us.
We're live.
Yes, we are. I was wondering if it was still snowing at Carolyn's.
Alright, we gotta get Desi outside. Desi wants to go
I
outside.
don't know.
Because you're gonna knock this down.
Oh, sounds good, Captain Lee.
Sassy wants to go out. Look. Yeah, okay, she's yelling.
Eating. Oh, lasagna. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm sorry guys, I'm coming. We had like a little, I can't believe this waited till right now. Okay, did you shut the lights down? Roman? Okay. Alright, I put Desi in. You can't leave
Sounds
Desi
good,
here
eh?
like that.
Yeah.
Come on, Desi. You gotta go out. Do you wanna go out? Let's go. Yeah. Let's go this way. Here it is. Here it is.
Do you like lasagna, Lark, or is it one of the things you can't taste?
I haven't tried it yet.
Oh,
I'm sorry guys, I'll be right there.
Yeah.
Vegetable lasagna is really good.
Because tomato is one of the things that has been yucky. Yeah. But normally I really do like a, 4 cheese lasagna or something. Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Watch out now.
Yeah.
Stop. Okay.
But if you can't taste it, what's the point?
I
I
know.
know,
You guys
right?
can talk to the chat.
Yeah.
It's okay, really.
I know.
I'm coming. I'm very sorry. Oh my goodness.
Well,
Everybody decided to get crazy at the same time. Okay. Rowan, you okay? You can go in your bed now, Rowan. Good boy. Good boy. Okay. I'll bring your bed over here if you want, Romy, or you can stay there. Okay?
Oh,
Okay.
I hope he's okay. Not
What?
getting something again.
there we go.
Somebody muted me? Okay. All right. Oh, I was talking to you guys. I didn't know I was muted. All right.
I didn't know you were muted either.
I was saying you guys could talk to them. I said we were having, oh boy, everybody went crazy at the same time. But sorry about that. I didn't.
Is it still snowing there, Carolyn?
Yeah. Is it still snowing? I don't know if it's still snowing, but it was snowing.
Yeah.
All right. It was snowing. Ethan said
Same
like
here.
that much. It's crazy. I don't even want to talk about it.
I know.
All right. I'm sorry, guys. I don't like to do that, but I don't know. We're going to start with the testimony of Dennis Rocha, and I don't know if Scooter's here. So, does somebody want to read the part of Dennis Rocha? Don't all speak at once. Even someone in the chat. Does anybody want to read the part of Dennis Rocha? Okay. Sharon? Margot? Chrisree? Clark? Captain Lee Finn?
Bart, yeah, Bart.
Snow Remover? Robbity Bob?
Uh-oh.
It's just reading a transcript. You don't have to
I
do
can
any
try
special
if
voice.
I just do it from here.
You can do it from there.
If nobody else is volunteering.
Okay. I'm gonna put the transcript in the.
If Shanna shows up, she was interested in doing it some night.
Oh really?
Oh.
That would be
Mhm.
nice. Okay. Let me get this now here. Okay.
Robbity Bob with my Kiwi accent.
Well, come on. Come on. It's taking forever to load up. So if you missed our live earlier, you know that maybe you wouldn't know. Maybe you know it, even if you missed it, that Terry, Matthew Terry, guilty of first-degree murder, premeditated murder. Kay Baker. Now they go to phase 2. Is it going to be life or the death penalty? And very emotional day on the Waukesha Christmas pageant, parade, tragedy pageant. And tomorrow they're going to have, I think, the victim's mother's going to speak, and then they're going to sentence him. So that'll be that. Hold on, I'm just waiting. I had to wait for this thing to freaking load up. Okay, I'm going to get to get the case facts and click here. Okay, People's Prosecution Witness. All right, I'm going to put this in the chat. See if you can pull this up and go. Let's see. Okay.
Okay, now I have to scroll down a certain ways.
You have to scroll down to, we are at witness number, I think it's not, did I say it was Dennis Roach? I'm sorry, we're not doing Dennis Roach, we're doing Ron Gransky. So that's Sharon's husband. And then when you see it was witness number 9, Ron Gransky, Sharon's companion, and then there's a little link that says testimony, then you just click on that.
Okay. Witness number 9, okay.
Okay, and 2 things that are going to be discussed here are 2 emails, and I can show them now. And this one says, let's see. From Bob Ford to Ron Cloward. Subject forward, Covina access to Thousand Oaks Park and Trail. And it says Lacey Peterson contacted me on September 5th and October 31st, 2002, requesting that the city close off the trail access at Covina Avenue. Mrs. Peterson stated that the undesirable activity that was going on at this access area and that there were weeds, trash, and graffiti that needed to be cleaned up. I have attached the November 1st email to Dwayne Frederick, Parks Maintenance Supervisor, which explains our response to Mrs. Peterson. I personally looked at the Covina access pathway and did not find it to be particularly overgrown or in a trashy condition, but did recommend some vegetation trimming for visibility, graffiti, and trash cleanup, along with a street light at the end of Covina. I know that the street light did not get installed. Please note that the November 1st email was originally CC'd to Sergeant Bromus and Officer Kershoff. I am also forwarding an email from a Jacob Schwartz of San Diego who sends information from a psychic reading that he had regarding this case. The psychic claims to see her face down in shallow water not far from her home. I can't see how searchers and dogs would have missed her. Robert J. Ford, Project Coordinator, City of Modesto, Parks, Recreation, and Neighborhoods Department. Okay, that's one, and then there's one more they have. Actually, it looks like that's the same email. Bob Ford to Dwayne Frederick. Actually, they don't. Oh, here it is. Okay, Dwayne Frederick. You'll have to do scroll down. Here we go. Pull this over. This one. Bob Ford to Dwayne Frederick. Dwayne, Lacey Peterson of 523 Covina called again this week about closing Covina Avenue, asking about at the dirt pathway which leads down to the park and trail. I told her that our department wishes to keep this access. Mrs. Peterson proceeded to list the problems that she sees with the Covina Avenue Park and Trail access path. There looks to be approximately 300 feet of dirt path from the dead end of Covina down to the asphalt trail. Ms. Peterson claims the path needs to have vegetation trimmed to improve visibility, graffiti removed, and trash picked up. She also asked about some lights along the path. I think that it might help to trim the vegetation to make the path less concealed. Please ask Wally to look into the vegetation trimming, trash, and graffiti removal. Perhaps a street light at the dead-end point of Covina would help to alleviate a nighttime visibility problem for police. Thanks, Robert J. Ford. So that's Defendant's Exhibit G2. So we're going to hear why that is relevant when we have the Gransky testimony here. So, okay. Are you ready, Margot?
Yep.
Okay. Let me just do this. Hold on. Spotlight. Let me spotlight you here. If I pin, and then can I go add pin? Hopefully that'll have us both up there. Okay. Let's see. I hope Carolyn uses her accents. Oh, don't you worry. Okay. So, hi everybody. Hi Sherry Ann and everybody that's here. Welcome, welcome. Okay. All right. Mr. Gransky, just very brief, little background since we've gone over this with some other witnesses. Before, you met Sharon in 1977?
Correct.
Sharon Rocha, and you and she have been together since that time?
Yes, her cousin Gwen, and Harvey set us up on a blind date.
And prior to that, I think you were in the Navy at some point.
Yes, I was. Spent 4 years in the Navy, and I worked in naval intelligence.
What year was that?
That was from 66 through 69. I got a Purple Heart, as a matter of fact.
And when you met Sharon in 1977, Lacey was with her, is that right?
Well, not the first date, but...
Okay, right. That would be an interesting blind date.
Yeah.
But when you started a relationship together and started living together, Lacey grew up in your home, correct?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And you have considered yourself her stepfather since she was about 2 years old?
She spent a lot of time with me, and 25 and a half years, and so yes, she was with me a lot of times. She would go see Dennis, of course, but I saw all of her little. Yes, I watched her grow up.
And you were present and around the family when Lacey met the defendant in this case?
Yes.
Okay, and you attended their wedding?
Yes.
Did the normal things that a family does?
Yes.
And when Lacey and Scott Peterson moved back to Modesto in 2000, they lived in your home for a short time?
A couple of weeks.
Okay. And then they moved into the rental house, we've heard.
Yes. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I don't remember exactly, where the rental house was.
That's okay. And then you were aware, of course, that Lacey became pregnant.
Sure, it was.
And your relationship with Lacey was probably not the same as Sharon's?
No, not at all. No.
Sharon would talk to her on the phone?
They were best friends.
Okay.
She would ask her advice. Lacey would come to me if there was something that had to do with the world or, people, and...
And your job is a construction superintendent?
Correct, yeah.
What company do you work for?
I work for Dell Engineering.
And?
We build commercial buildings, not houses, and so shopping centers and fast food restaurants.
Kind of industrial areas, things like that?
Yes.
And how long have you been doing that?
Well, I've been in construction 29 years, but superintendent for about 15.
Now let's go to, I want to kind of just jump right into this. Let's go to December 15th of 2002. And we've heard from Sharon that one of your hobbies is fishing.
Yes, I know.
Is that kind of an understatement?
Well, I like to fish and...
Okay.
Yeah, I carry my pole with me. It's in the car right now.
All right.
She knows.
And on the 15th, you took Sharon fishing. Where did you go?
There's Oakdale. It's an orange blossom. I'm giving away my fishing spot.
I was going to say, you don't need to give away your secret spot, but what I'm getting at, don't...
We went fishing in Oakdale.
Okay.
And
how far is Oakdale from your house?
I think it's 16 and a half miles.
All right. And so it takes, what, about 20 minutes or so to get there?
Yeah, I can make it in 25, depending.
And do you remember on the 15th of December 2002, what were you fishing for? What kind of fish?
It's black bass. There's catfish and perch in there, but I was fishing for black bass.
And how long did you fish that day?
I think a couple of hours.
Did you catch anything?
Yeah, I caught 2, but Sharon was reading the paper and I...
Okay, Sharon. Sharon, you were here in court when she testified that she was sitting in a chair reading the paper?
I stopped and bought her a pair of because I've been trying to get her to go fishing with me. Maybe one of these days she would go. I stopped and bought her a pair of boots, weather protector boots, so she could walk around, and sit there with me.
And it was a typical December day.
Yeah,
Weather was probably pretty cold.
it was, yeah. To be honest, I don't remember things. When I'm out fishing, I just, if I'm out fishing, that's all I'm worried about.
Okay, and thinking about? Oh, sorry, that's you.
And thinking about?
And do you remember what type of a bait or lures that you were using that day?
Yeah, black bass. I was fishing for black bass, and there's all kinds of different baits you use. But I prefer, depending on the type of year, I use spinner bait and I use plastic rubber frogs. And there's a lot of tools at this place.
And those are lures or trying to,
Yeah, they're,
not fishermen on the jury, but those are specific lures that you use to catch that specific type of fish.
yeah,
Okay.
that's true. I never had a perch or anything like that, grab a frog, so there's no way. I'm not going to say it couldn't happen, but it doesn't. So,
Okay. And later that night, did you go over to Lacey's house for dinner?
yeah, that was the plan. The way it worked was, it was the last episode of Sopranos, and I was complaining because it comes on cable at 9 o'clock, and Scott and Lacey had satellite. And Lacey said, well, we get it at 6. Why don't you come over for dinner and we'll watch the last episode? So that's what we did.
Okay. Coming on at 9 o'clock, is that a little late in your normal typical schedule?
Yeah, I get up at 3:30, 4:30 at the latest every day, and so
As part of your job, do you drive to a lot of different locations, whenever your construction projects are going on?
yes, I put between 35 and 50,000 miles a year on my car. So I do a lot of driving.
So you're up early
Yes.
and you get to your sites and you do your thing early
Yes.
and you go to bed early after that.
Yes.
So you went over to Lacey's house and The Sopranos came on at 6 because they have satellite, right?
Right.
Okay. And did you talk, or did either of you or Sharon talk about going fishing that day?
I brought it up. I like to kid quite a bit. I brought it up. Can you believe it? I finally got Sharon to go fishing with me. Well, not really fishing. She went watching with me. And that's pretty much, I might have said a few other things, but I don't remember.
Okay. And at that time, were Lacey and Scott Peterson, the defendant, were they present during this conversation?
Yes.
Okay. While you were talking about fishing that night, did either party mention that Scott Peterson had recently bought a boat?
Not a thing.
Okay. At any time up until the 24th of December, did either Scott Peterson or Lacey Peterson talk to you or mention that Scott Peterson had bought a boat there in the month of December?
No, not at all. I mentioned at times I wished I had a boat, but I couldn't really afford one, so I had a float tube. That's what I have.
All right, let me ask you about that. Had you mentioned to Lacey or Scott, because you're fishing, that you would like to have some kind of a boat to use?
Yeah, there are times I would like
Okay.
to catch some better fish, probably different areas, so
And the type of fishing you do is either from the bank?
it's always pretty much from a bank. Once in a while, I go out with a friend with a boat or in a float tube. I go out in a float tube.
All right, I know what a float tube is because we talked, but just for the jury who are not fisher people, a float tube is, it's like a big rubber ring and you kind of fit it in and you wear fins and you kind of kick out into the water.
I wear fins and a wetsuit, and I mean
Waders.
waders. And you put your fins on. Oh, sorry. Oh, no, that's me. And you put your fins on, and it's got a place to put your gear.
And you can kind of kick out off the shore.
Yeah, just kick out offshore.
Okay.
It's very relaxing.
So was the fact that you were a very avid fisherman, was that fact known to Scott Peterson and Lacey?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it wasn't a secret.
Oh, no. Scott knew.
What was that?
Scott knew.
Okay, and now as part of your fishing, you said that you keep how many poles do you have? Do you have any idea?
8 or 10.
Okay,
Different depending on the type of fishing I go. So,
all right. Do you have all types of fishing? Do you do
I
all
do.
types
I
of
have
fishing?
I do. I have some heavy gear for ocean or big fish, but
Like for saltwater fishing?
yes,
Well, what's the main type of fishing that you do though?
freshwater. I go reasonably close to the house, so within an hour and 20 minutes at the farthest, I would guess.
Are you familiar with the areas around Modesto where you can go freshwater fishing?
I think everyone.
Okay.
Might be a couple of them.
Can you tell the jury, can you just start? You told us about this place in Oakdale where you went.
Yeah, here again, if you don't fish, some lakes are stocked, by the Department of Fish and Game, and they're stocked more at certain times of the year than other times of the year. So if you fish a lot, you get to know which are the best times to go to those lakes. And so I go to McSwain, especially in the summer.
Okay, let me ask you about are you aware of a place called the Modesto Reservoir?
Yes,
Okay, that's a place you can fish.
yes, it's not very good there.
Okay, and what about Box Grove Fishing Access? Do you know where that is?
Yeah, that's only good a couple of times of the year, though, in my opinion.
All right, and then is there another lake called Lake Tulloch?
Yes, Tulloch Lake. I haven't fished that enough. It's a little bit farther away, and if I go to fish that, I want to get there early and stay late, so I don't fish that one too often.
And you said you go to Lake McSwain?
Yeah,
How far is McSwain?
it's 44 minutes from my house.
Okay, and what about, and we've heard that your house is fairly close to 523 Covina Lacey's house.
It's about a mile away.
All right, and then let's see, Lake McClure, is that another one?
Yeah, that's right up by McSwain.
Okay, so about the same distance.
Yeah, 7 miles farther.
Okay, what about Lake Don Pedro?
Yes, I fish that one a lot.
How far is that one?
It's about 45 minutes away.
So there's, I've run through, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 lakes here, and they're all within an hour or so of your home.
Right.
And some of them are much closer than that, right?
Yeah.
Like Turlock Lake, how far?
Turlock, that's about 30 minutes away.
Okay, and those are the main areas where you fish?
Yes.
Okay, then do you own a year-round fishing license?
Oh, yeah, as a matter of fact, I get it. Normally Sharon buys me one at Christmas time, or somebody will. If they don't, I buy it the next day, so that's usually the way it works.
How many years in a row do you think you've owned a year-long fishing license?
Well, probably 10. I did go to Memphis, Tennessee, and I was back there for 18 months, so I had.
Did you do any fishing back there?
Oh, yeah, but back there, because I was out of state, you get a couple-day license back there. So,
Oh, okay. And now you said you keep a fishing pole in your car.
yeah.
Why is that?
Well, because I travel a lot due to, basically through the valley, and when the job is over and you go by a stream or a lake, you can see a sign that says, fishing. Sometimes I pull in. Check it out. If it looks good, then I want to fish.
All right. Now we've talked about you've known Scott Peterson basically since he and Lacey got together?
Not as well as Sharon, but her and her mom, like I said, they get into the meat of everything.
Right. That's kind of a normal mother-daughter relationship.
Yes,
Is that what you're describing?
right.
And after Scott and Lacey moved back to Modesto, did you ever ask Scott Peterson to go fishing with you?
Yes.
How many times do you think from the time he moved back until December 24th, 2002, do you think you'd asked him to go?
I don't know, 8, 10, 20, I really don't know.
Okay, over 10 times, do you think?
Probably, but he was busy and something happened. Something.
All right, did he, of those, 10, 8, 10, whatever amount of times, did he ever take you up on that?
Yes, once.
One time. And do you know when that was?
I can't remember exactly, but it was either fishing at Lake Almador. They have some really big trout, and I wanted him to catch a big trout. And you never go there in the summer because it's too hot. So it was either November or December of '01 or February, March of '02. So
And other than that one time, did you ever go fishing with Scott Peterson?
no,
And what was your relationship with him prior to December 24th? I mean, did you consider it a good one?
yes,
Did you consider you had any problems with him?
not at all.
Do you remember that one time that you went fishing with him? Do you remember what you were fishing for? What type of fish?
With Scott, you mean?
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah,
What was that?
big trout. They have black bass and catfish and perch in there, but I caught black bass and trout, but oh God, I'm giving away all this stuff.
That's all right. You don't have to give out too many secrets.
Okay, I won't give you too many.
That's enough. What do you remember? What type of bait or lures were you using that day?
Well, I usually use power bait, or they make a lure called Castmaster, and sometimes rooster tails, but mainly Castmasters, or a silver lure or power bait. I go fishing to relax.
Okay.
Kind of clears my head and watch nature. I sit on the bank. You're allowed to have 2 poles in a lake. In a river, you're not. So I set up one pole with power bait, and I kind of walk up and down and all around with different lures.
And fish?
Yes.
Did either one of you catch any fish that day?
No, it wasn't a very good day. That's why they call it fishing,
Uh-huh.
not catching.
Not catching. Do you remember if Scott Peterson brought his own fishing pole?
Yes.
Okay, and after the trip was over, did he take that fishing pole home with him?
No. We got back to the house and he had to leave early, and I loaded everything. We put his pole in my garage, and as a matter of fact, it's still in my garage.
So from November of '01 or so to February of '02, whatever that winter period you went,
Right.
to I guess the date was the defendant was arrested in April of '03. He never asked you for his fishing pole back?
I think I told him once that I had it in my garage. He said, "Ah, that's all right. Just leave it there." I said, "Okay."
Okay. Well, was that kind of a cheap pole that you would want to just kind of chuck away and not worry about?
Well, I don't think it was. This will probably sound silly, but it's a 6 ball bearing reel. It's a quick reel, and the more ball bearings in a reel, the more money they cost.
All right.
So mine are 2. So if that gives you any indication.
Okay, so this particular pole, was it designed for freshwater fishing?
Yes, it's a nice pole too.
And after this one time that you went fishing with him, it sat in your garage until today.
Yep, still there.
Still there.
Right.
In all the time that you've known Scott Peterson, did he ever ask you to go fishing?
No.
Did he ever say, Ron, I'm going to go out fishing today. You want to come along?
Nope.
On the 24th of December of '02, when the defendant said he went fishing out on the Berkeley Marina, did he call you up at all that day and say, "Hey, Ron, you know what? It's Christmas Eve. Let's go out and go fishing"?
Nope.
Now, on the 24th, let's go to the 24th. Did you work that day?
I got up early like I always do, and I had to go to the office in Lodi. And so I left my house about 6:30, and the boss was giving us the rest of the week off. So I went to get my paycheck and fill him in on what had been happening. And then I had to go from there to Los Banos because of a shopping center I was building was in Los Banos, and it was right at the finishing touches.
Let me stop you. Since we're not in Modesto and these are all valley towns, let's just put it in perspective a little bit. Modesto is kind of in the middle of these two areas, correct?
Correct.
And Lodi is what, about 50 miles or so up the 99 freeway?
It's 45 miles to our office.
Okay, and then you left, you picked up your check, you were getting the rest of the holiday week off.
Right.
Then you went from there down to, what did you get on? The 5 freeway?
Yeah, I went over to 5.
Okay.
I drove the bypass there at 4, cut off at 4, and stopped and took 5 all the way into Los Banos.
Okay, and Los Banos is what, 30 miles south of Modesto?
It's 50 miles from Modesto, but from the office it's 104 miles.
Okay.
From Lodi, too.
So
I drive a lot, so I keep track of stuff like that.
So basically, Modesto is right in the middle of these two places.
Right.
More or less. And you swung by Los Banos and you checked the job site there.
Yeah.
What time do you think that was? If you don't know the exact time, that's okay. But
Probably around 11, 11:30, 12. I wished everybody a Merry Christmas and said I would see them afterwards.
and then you left the job site, and on the way home, did you do any fishing?
Yeah, I believe I called Sharon, and that was a Tuesday. A lot of people had a kind of work part of a day, or you had to get things ready. And I told her I was getting ready, and she said she was going to the show, I believe with Sandy. So I figured, well, I've got a few hours, so I decided to drive and go fishing.
Okay, and did you go fishing at the same place in Oakdale where you had gone on the 15th?
Yes,
Okay, and do you remember what you were fishing for that day?
black bass.
And do you remember what type of lure you used on the 24th?
The same type. I'm trying to perfect using frogs, so I believe I used frogs most of the.
Okay, these were like little plastic frogs?
Yeah, you put them along the paddles, the top of the paddles.
And the bass, I guess they think it's alive and
Yeah, the bass just jump right up out of there. It's kind of fun to watch.
okay. And do you remember that day if you caught any fish?
I caught one. It wasn't, a great day. It was a little cold, so
And what time, let me ask you, how long do you think you fished for?
I know I got home somewhere between 2:30 and 3:30, so I don't know. Hour and a half maybe?
Couple of hours tops. Oh, sorry, that's you. Okay.
Couple of hours tops.
Now, when you got home, was Sharon home on the 24th?
Yes.
All right, and did Sharon ask you to do anything, to make a phone call?
Well, I was sitting down getting ready for dinner, and she asked me to call Lacey and tell her to bring some whipped cream, for Sharon makes a great chocolate pie, so we were having a chocolate pie, so
And did you do that?
yes.
And you didn't talk to anybody, right?
No, I got the recorder.
Did you leave a message?
Yes, I did.
Was it basically just, hi, Lacey, can you bring some whipped?
Yeah, hi Lacey, bring some whipped cream
Okay.
for chocolate pie.
What's the next thing you remember about what happened that day? Were you present when the defendant called Sharon?
Yes, I was. I was in the back, and Sharon answered the phone, and so when I hear she's sounding panicky in the kitchen, she says that Scott called and Lacey was missing. So I being optimistic said, she's probably out with the girlfriend somewhere. Don't worry about it. I always try to take the high road.
Right, okay.
And so,
And what happened next then?
well, I smoke, so I'm not allowed to smoke in the house. So I went out to the garage and was having a cigarette, and she came out and she said, Scott can't find Lacey.
Okay.
She said, I'm going over there. She said, get in the house on the phone.
Okay.
Call the police.
And what was her demeanor? What was Sharon's demeanor at this point?
She was very nervous and worried. And here again, I still couldn't believe something. So I just thought she was at a neighbor's.
And what happened next then?
Well, she came out of the back room and said, I told you to call the police. So I said, okay, I'm going to call the hospital. So I called the police, 911. I called the hospital. I told them Harvey?
No, I told them to contact all the
Oh, sorry.
hospitals.
I told them to contact all the hospitals. And because Lacey's 8 months pregnant, and I figured, well, the worst that could have happened is that maybe she fell down somewhere and needed some help. Then I called Gwen and Harvey. You've got to remember, this is Christmas Eve now. It's, I don't know, 5:30 or sometime, and I had to try and find as much help as I could find, and I knew Gwen and Harvey were having a bunch of family members over there. So I called my mom and sisters after that. They were supposed to be at our house for dinner at that time.
You say Gwen and Harvey. What is their last name?
Kemple.
And who are those people?
They are Sharon's cousins. They introduced Sharon to me.
Sharon's cousin. And which one of them? They're married, right?
Yeah, Gwen is Sharon's cousin.
Gwen is Sharon's cousin. Harvey is Gwen's
Husband.
And did you called them and did you tell them, hey, can you come and help us out with this?
I said, Scott called, Lacey's missing. I said I need some help, and of course, we have a tendency to get excited, but we all seem to function very well under. And so Harvey and Gwen got together. They told everybody at the house, let's get over to the park. Scott said that Lacey was walking the dog, and so we got to the park.
And what happened when you got down there?
Well, I waited at the house because after I called 911, the dispatcher there said, wait for an officer to come. So, oh well, I waited, I don't know, until about 6 or 6:20 or something, and nobody showed up. So I said, the heck with this, and went over to the park. And I went down to the park with flashlights. It was dark then, and I was looking for Lacey.
And did you spend some time in the park looking for Lacey?
Quite a bit of time. It just, yes. And then I believe an officer came by.
Objection. It's not responsive. There's no question pending. Sustained. Well, what happened next? You were down in the park looking? Can you do it? Just question and answer. I'll do it, Judge. You were down in the park looking. Go ahead. You said an officer came by. Well, what's the next thing you remember?
They told us to get out of the park, that they were going to have a helicopter with a heat sensor and search for warm bodies.
Okay. And did you go out of the park then?
Yes.
And where did you go to?
Well, I walked back up to the path, and it's a real steep path, and up towards the house. And I'm saying on the way up there, there's no way in hell Lacey walked up this path.
Okay.
She's just too pregnant, so...
Now, the path that you're talking about, that's the path that leads at the end of Covina, at the end of their street.
Yes.
And then you said that there's a path that leads down into the park.
Yeah, that's the same.
Is that where you came up out of?
Yes.
So you were walking up the hill.
Right.
And at the time you were walking, you were thinking, this is a pretty steep path.
Yeah, it was hard for me. I mean, I know I'm old, but I'm still in fairly good shape. And there's no way she's a little 5-foot girl that could walk up that path 8 months pregnant. No way.
Okay. Then after you got up there, what's the next thing? What's the next thing that you did there at the house?
Well, there was all kinds of people, and so apparently people started calling people and more people, and there's people everywhere. And and there was some police officers up there, and I saw Sharon and Harvey, and we were talking, trying to figure out what we were going to do. And they said we can't go in the house. So we were all kind of hanging around out front.
While you were there, did you have any contact with Scott Peterson?
Only very briefly. We were standing out in the front under a tree, and I was talking with a couple of officers, and Scott came walking up. And I said, said, hi, Scott. Hi. Scott said hi. I said, how was your golf today? He said, no, I didn't play golf. I went fishing. And I, being the smart behind I am, I said, well, what time did you go fishing? He said, oh, about 9:30. And I said, 9:30? I said, that's when I come home from fishing. That's not when I go. And he turned around and walked away. I was just kidding, but I felt bad that I had said that.
Okay. Did he tell you where he had gone fishing? Did you ask him?
No, not at that time. No.
Okay. So he comes walking up to you and you say, hey, how was your golf today? And then he said, oh, no, I went fishing instead.
Yeah.
And did that strike you as, how did you take that?
Well, I was just...
Excuse me, irrelevant. I think so, sustained. Okay. After he had this, you said you made this thing back. that's when I come back from fishing, right?
Right.
And you say he turned around and walked away.
Yes.
Did he say anything else?
No, not, no, no. I didn't talk to him for, I don't know, 2 or 3 days later.
Okay, and then the rest of that evening,
2 days later.
you didn't have any further contact with him.
No.
Did you have any contact with him again at some point? You
You mean that same
day
day?
or a subsequent day?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. You said you didn't talk to him for a couple of days?
Yeah.
You said, okay, so can you explain or tell me about the next time you talked to him?
Okay. Can I explain why,
Yeah, go ahead.
You have to realize there was a lot going on at that time.
Uh-huh.
There were people everywhere. Friends and family were searching. And at that time, one of our friends had called the Sund Carrington Foundation, who came to help us out, who in turn got a hold of the press. And now things are starting to really go, and we're panicking. It's the holidays. We can't. We don't know where she is. And we know people are out enjoying their families and friends. And we're out in the park and the countryside trying to find our daughter. And so people start talking to you. And did you know Scott was fishing at...
Objection, hearsay. Yeah, well, see, this is not really responsive. Yeah. You don't need to tell me.
Okay.
Yeah, you know what people were saying about that. Tell me about the circumstances, though. You said that you were panicking, you're trying to get resources in, right?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. What happened then? Objection. Just tell me about that. Objection. Vague. There's no way to answer that. See your answer for a narrative answer, and I don't know where we're going to go with the answer. Okay. The question was, what is the next time you talk to Scott Peterson? And you explain that.
All right.
In other words, Mr. Gransky, there was a lot of stuff going on, and you didn't have a lot of time to go and see the defendant and talk to him.
Right.
Because everybody was looking for Lacey, right?
Mm-hmm.
When the last time was the next time after the 24th, when was that you talked to Scott Peterson?
I believe it was the afternoon of the 25th or 26th.
Okay. What were the circumstances? How did you get around to talking to him?
Well, I wanted to ask him about his fishing trip to Berkeley.
To Berkeley. Go ahead, Mr. DiStasso. Okay, go ahead. Did you ask him about that?
Well, yes, and he...
Tell me what happened in that conversation.
Well, I told him, I said, I think your Berkeley fishing trip is a fishy story. If you did something else, did you have a girlfriend? Did you go see your girlfriend? I said, you better get it out now, because if you don't, it's going to come out, and you're going to look a lot worse. And he said no, and turned around and walked away.
Other than he said no and turned around and walked away, did he give you any other explanation or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
He might have said I went fishing.
All right.
And that might have been it.
After that, at this point, I take it, you didn't know anything about Amber Fry.
No.
Had you ever had any knowledge up until, sometime later when you were told about the affair that Scott Peterson had been involved in an affair?
Yes.
Had you had knowledge? Here's what I'm asking you. Did Scott Peterson or Lacey ever say anything about Scott having an affair with Amber Fry?
No, not at all.
Okay, were you aware at any time up to the 24th that he had an affair with some other woman down in San Luis Obispo?
No, not at all.
Did you know anything about the activities with his activities with either of these women?
No, not at all.
When was the first time that you heard that Scott Peterson had purchased a boat?
Oh, I can't remember exactly, but it was probably a day or so after, and somebody had said, did you know Scott had a boat? I said, what boat?
When you say a day or two or so after, is that the day or so after the 24th?
Correct.
Now you told us about getting these resources through, like the Son Carrington Foundation, and they were able to bring in the press or at least publicize this?
I believe that's how it happened. There was a lot of Lacey's girlfriends that also helped, so they might have done that.
Okay, and you were present during a press conference where, well, let me start a bit earlier than that. Did you observe Scott Peterson at all? Did he make any statements, or did you see anything where he did not want to interact with the press? Well, that's a compound question. You asked him 3 things, right? Did you see anything like on the 25th or 26th where Scott Peterson did not want to interact with the press?
I just kept saying, this isn't about, Lacey. I mean about me. It's about Lacey. And so no, he didn't want, to talk to the press.
Okay, did he ever go out and make a statement like, hey, please help me find my wife, something like that?
Not that I know of, but I'm not saying he didn't. I just don't remember.
Okay, were you present during a press conference that Scott Peterson walked out of?
I'm sure I was, because I was at most of them, but I can't remember.
You don't remember?
No.
And what? Were you present at all when a decision was made for someone other than Scott Peterson to kind of be like the press liaison?
Yes, I was.
Tell me about that. What was that meeting like?
I believe that this was right after we at the Red Lion Inn, we had a command center set up at the Red Lion, and they wanted to call a family meeting, meaning both the Petersons and the Rocha family. And I believe Scott had decided that he wanted a spokesperson for not all of us.
Objection. It's non-responsive. It's hearsay. It calls for speculation. It isn't a direct statement. I don't know what we're talking about. Yeah, I think so. That's... What? He's testifying to Scott Peterson's state of mind. So, did the time come, Mr. Gransky, when someone was designated to be an official spokesperson for the family?
Yes.
When was that?
That was when we got to the command center out at the Red Lion Inn. I can't remember exactly. I would say the 29th, maybe?
Who made that decision?
Well, at that particular time, supposedly it was a vote. I didn't go for it, but...
It was the family voted.
Yes.
Okay. Who was designated to be the spokesperson?
Sue, the sister.
Sister.
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead. Did you ever hear of Scott Peterson? Did you personally ever hear of Scott Peterson saying anything about him not wanting to be the spokesperson?
Yeah.
And what did he say?
He said, this isn't about me. It will wind up being about me. It's about Lacey.
Nothing further at this time, Your Honor. Good morning, Mr. Gransky.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm pretty good.
Good.
Considering.
Yeah, I know. It's not the usual thing, is it?
No, it isn't.
The relationship that you have with Scott, how you been, I guess it's been described as Sharon's companion, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
For about 26 years.
Yeah, a little over.
When did you first meet Scott?
That's a good question. Sharon and I went down there and I really couldn't tell you. I'm not positive, so I don't want to guess. So...
Okay, is it a fair statement that Sharon had a lot more to do with Lacey and Scott than you did?
That's correct.
Okay, is it also a fair statement that Lacey was much closer to Sharon than she was to you?
That's correct.
Okay, and even though you were around while she was being raised, she spent a lot of time with Dennis.
No.
She did not?
No, she spent more time with me in our house than she did out at the ranch.
Okay, now you had Mr. DeStasso had asked you some questions. You went fishing on Christmas on December 24th, the same day.
Correct.
Okay, and you went at what time?
Probably about, like I said, somewhere around 12:30 in the afternoon.
And almost exactly that time that Scott Peterson went fishing.
Correct.
Okay, and
90 miles closer, but...
It was closer to your work, but you were working that day. He wasn't, as far as you know, right?
That's correct.
Okay, and he had a boat and you did not, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and you went fishing. Did you tell anybody in advance that you were going fishing?
I can't remember. I don't know if I did.
Did you tell anybody at work that you were going fishing?
Nope.
Okay, did you tell anybody the night before that, hey, I'm going fishing tomorrow?
Nope.
Did you tell anybody and say, well, did you call Scott up and say, do you want to go fishing with me tomorrow?
No, I got tired of doing that.
Okay, well, he had gone fishing with you once, correct?
Correct.
And you were aware that he had gone fishing as recently as Thanksgiving, a month before.
I believe.
Okay, and you knew he had gone to Mammoth with his family and had gone fishing.
Yes.
You knew that he had gone, actually, you knew that he had an interest in fishing before you did, isn't that correct?
Well, I don't know what that means. What do you mean before I did?
Well, when did you start fishing?
Oh, I was probably 15.
Okay, when did you start going on a regular basis?
About 10 years ago.
About 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And were you aware that Scott had fished virtually his entire life?
No, I was aware that he had been fishing. I didn't get into the, time frame, so
Okay, how much time would you say in the year 2002, how many times would you say that you saw Scott?
in 2002, maybe 50.
Okay, how many of those times did just you and he do something together?
Probably about 10 or 15 times. I mean, not him and I together.
Just the two of you.
Oh no, only once.
Only once, the fishing.
Right.
Okay, then is it a fair statement that as Lacey got more pregnant, or as the pregnancy proceeded, that Scott made an effort to try and include you and Sharon more with them?
Yes, he did.
Okay.
Yes, he did.
And would that involve having you and Sharon, as she progressively got more pregnant, or the due date approach, coming over on Sundays, for instance, for dinners?
Yes.
Okay, and then he wanted to spend more time or have families get closer together.
About 2 weeks before Lacey
Disappeared?
disappeared, I made a point of asking Sharon about that. It's kind of strange. We're all starting to get together. She said that Lacey said Scott wanted us to spend more time together because of the baby.
Now, the trip you said you took with Scott to go fishing, was that at Lake Almador?
Yes.
And did you fish from a bank?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to ask you now, how much details, what was your involvement with Lacey and Scott? You have a lot of involvement in terms of knowing what the details of their life were?
And I don't know in what areas. I don't know.
Let me ask you, did you know what the purchase price for their house was?
For some reason, I remember hearing 182,000, and I thought that was high, so.
Okay, I'm going to show you a report that Detective Grogan wrote on December 30th. I'm glad you brought the glasses.
I haven't got my good ones.
I've got it yellow highlighted.
Yes.
Okay, does that refresh your recollection that when Detective Grogan interviewed you, you didn't know the price?
Yes.
And now, is it fair to say that you also told Detective Grogan you had an interview with police 5 days, 6 days, sit-down interview, you and Sharon?
Correct.
Okay. During the interview, you said that even when Scott should have been mad at Lacey, he wasn't.
Yes, I did.
Is it a fair statement? Did you tell them that Scott provided Lacey with anything she wanted?
I don't remember saying that, but I could have.
I'll show you again.
They seemed very.
Keep the glasses out.
I'm not doubting you. I'm just saying I don't remember. Yeah.
Okay, and did you also indicate that when you said when Lacey wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, that Scott was very supportive of that as well?
I don't remember saying that, but here again, I could have said that. I mean, that was a long time ago. There was a lot going on in my life at that time, so.
Did you say that they didn't have any separations in their marriage? They spent 90% of their time together?
That's correct.
Okay, now, did you also say that neither you nor Sharon knew whether or not Lacey went out, whether she, when she went out, whether she locked the doors?
I never got into that. That's true. I never did. She never would say that to me, so
All right, and did you make the statement that Lacey is the most stubborn person you've ever known?
she is. I've known her since she was 2, and there's no doubt about it. But that doesn't make it.
I'm not.
No, that's good.
It wasn't in a negative fashion.
No,
Describing her as extremely determined,
exactly, right.
headstrong, and that she would do what she had a mind to do.
If she felt it was right, yes.
Okay, now did you also say that you were not familiar with Scott, that Scott was never real open with you?
Correct.
Okay, and that his personality was such that he was not an overly emotional person. Is that a fair statement?
From what I saw, that's correct.
And he was very much even keel, didn't get angry, didn't get mad.
Yeah,
Basically, didn't show a whole lot of emotion. That was just his personality.
yes, from what I saw, yes.
And that was what, over the course of 50 times that you had seen him in the 1 year prior?
Yeah,
Now, is it also that you mentioned that you talked about some of the things that you knew about Lacey and Scott? Is it a fair statement that you told the police you didn't know what the spending habits were?
correct.
You didn't know if Lacey was pleased, if an item she wanted was on sale, but she wouldn't necessarily wait for you to go on sale Is that something you described?
Here again, Sharon and I were in the interview together at the same time, so it was pretty much directed at both of us, and I'm not. Her and Lacey spend most of the time
Okay.
together, so
Did you also describe, and I'm not quoting from the report, tell me if it's accurate, that you have never seen Scott or Lacey involved in an argument, raise their voices at each other, complain about any problems with the relationship?
that's correct.
And you talked about that Lacey had become more family oriented lately,
Correct.
and that Scott seemed very happy to be visiting them when he came to the house. Is that true?
Yeah,
And that's what you told the police.
Lacey has always been family oriented.
And the second statement, that Scott seemed very happy to be visiting with them when they came to the house.
Yeah.
That's also true.
Hmm.
Okay. You also described to the police that you had that Scott had been standoffish to you since this comment that you made in the driveway.
That was my impression, yes.
Okay.
I didn't talk to him.
The comment was, if I got it right, he's in the driveway. Is he standing with the police officer?
He came walking up as I was talking to the police to where I was standing.
Okay, and you say, how was golfing?
Yeah.
Okay, and he said?
He said I didn't go golfing. I went fishing.
And you told him, you said, that sounded like a fishy story.
Yeah, I said, what time did you go fishing?
And he said?
9:30. And I said, that's when you come home. Kidding. That's not when you go fishing.
You didn't joke with him and say, wow, that's amazing. I was fishing today at the exact same time.
No, I didn't have a chance. He turned around and walked away.
Okay, at that point, his pregnant wife was missing.
Sure.
Everybody's in a high state of panic.
Sure.
The police are there.
I agree.
Okay, is it?
And I felt bad.
You felt bad.
Yeah.
Because?
Sure.
You thought that he thought you were implying something, or that you thought he thought that you were implying something.
Right, and
Excuse me. I can't have the two of you. I'm not getting this. So if you go back to you were implying something, he said, right? Okay, let the witness finish his answer. Mr. Gransky, you said you felt bad. Finish your answer.
well, because that was the first time it hit me. It was in front of 2 police officers. I'm making an offhanded joke about fishing, so that was the reason.
As you sit here, it's understandable that somebody might take an offense to that, and that's what you realized at the time, right?
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor. It's argumentative. Overruled. I mean, that's
That's correct.
what you realized at the time. Now, did you tell the police any time within that first week, hey, it's not unusual, I was fishing that exact same time?
I think I had. I did, yes.
Do you remember who you told? Was that the same interview with Detective Grogan?
I don't know who.
Okay, now you also described, I think in the interview, Scott is a very serious and focused person who was not real emotional, and he seemed serious at times and not as outgoing as Lacey. Is that a fair statement of yours?
Yes.
Your impression. And they asked you all kinds of other questions, like, did they enjoy violent movies? You were asked if there was any, how many gifts Scott bought. Things like that for Christmas. Do you remember going through all those?
Yes.
Okay, and you said you were unaware of them.
Correct.
Okay, they also asked you in that interview if you knew whether Scott and Lacey left their shoes by the door. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and you wouldn't know that. You didn't know that.
No, I didn't know.
Okay, and then when you were down at the park at first, were you with Sharon?
No.
Sharon went separately from you, as I understand. She went with Sandy Rickard.
Yes, she went. I waited at the house. The police told me they were going to wait there, so I did.
Okay. And that, how long did it take before the police showed up?
At my house?
Yes.
They didn't. To my knowledge, I waited until sometime after 6, and I left and went to the park.
Okay.
So I went to the house with my car and then went down to the park.
So, okay, you left your house, which, as we've heard, is 4 or 5 minutes away from the Covina house.
Yeah, 5 minutes.
And is your house on this map behind you that's marked People's 22?
I don't know.
If this is Covina right here?
It's over in this area somewhere.
Okay, the upper portion, the other side of the park.
Yes.
Can I ask you a question? I don't think it's been cleared up yet. Mr. Gransky, when you went to the park, are you able to drive on the grounds of the park, or do you have to park on the street and walk into the park?
If you go to the main entrance, they have a parking area for cars. But where I went was...
So you went to a parking lot, you parked there, and you walked into the park?
No, I parked by Lacey's house.
Okay, and then you walked into the park?
And I went down there.
If I wanted to go to the park, for example, there's a place where I can park my car?
Yes.
Provided for in the park?
Yes.
And then I can walk anywhere I want to, right?
Yes.
That would be what the judge is referring to is this area, correct?
Yes.
The parking area between where there's a circle that says vigil and a circle that says kind of a T/C is the parking lot there, and your house is somewhere up in this area.
Yeah.
On the top of the diagram.
Let me stand up. I'm trying to find the bridge. There's a bridge that goes across to...
If you know where the bridge is, Mr. Garagos, can you point it out to him if you know where it is?
I think it's further up. I think it's right over here. I think it's over in there.
Off the map?
I think it's off the map.
It's off the map. Now, when you arrived, you came, I assume, down here over and parked on Covina.
Correct.
Okay, what street is this that you came down?
Well, it changed its name. It's Oakdale. And then it becomes El Vista.
You came down here, you parked, and then you walked down. And where did you go in the park?
Well, first I went this way, and it was dark and cold,
There was, it was very little lighting in this area.
Yes, very little at all.
Blocking, I don't know if I'm blocking the jury.
And then I walked around all the way back to the tennis courts.
Okay, did you see Sharon at all?
I can't remember.
Did you yell out her name or anything like that?
No.
I assume you were yelling out for Lacey's name?
Yes.
Okay, did you see Scott in the park?
I don't remember.
Okay, now at some point there was I think you described to the prosecutor, there was a meeting of some kind or a press conference, and Scott said, "It's not about me, it's about finding Lacey."
Well, he said that a lot before that. It wasn't just that time.
Okay, I mean, it was a constant theme that he did not want this to become about him. This was about trying to find Lacey. Isn't that correct?
Yes, at the time, yes.
Okay, and then you're aware that there were search warrants executed on the house on that, late on the 26th and through the 27th, correct?
Yes.
And at some point, the media had started kind of camping out by the house and pretty much blocked off the whole street of Covina. Isn't that correct?
Both of our houses, yes.
Yes, I was going to get there. You had a media encampment at Covina. You had a media encampment in front of your house.
Yes.
The warehouse, also the command center, and it was literally like nothing you've ever seen in terms of media presence.
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor. Compound. A lot of different locations in there. I don't think. Well, let him answer. Let his answer stand. Go ahead. And now, at the point that you were already people who were, or the focus was on Scott Peterson, isn't that correct? Objection, Your Honor. It calls for speculation. Well, I'm asking. I'll ask it in a different way. People were asking. I'm going to sustain this objection. Next question. People were asking you questions about whether Scott was involved. Objection, Your Honor. Relevance. It calls for hearsay. Overruled. That's you.
I don't know if they were asking me, but that's a big town. A lot of people were out searching. I don't remember, maybe friends.
When you did a press conference in order to get out the search for Lacey, people would ask you whether you thought Scott was involved.
Yes.
Isn't that correct? And you would say no.
Yeah, correct.
And you would repeatedly say no up until January, was it the 15th, when you were presented with pictures of Scott and Amber?
No, that's when I said it publicly, yes.
Okay.
But that...
But you never told the police anything else?
No.
To the contrary, before they showed you those pictures, right?
Right.
Okay, and once they showed you the pictures of Amber, is it a fair statement that at that point the Roaches had turned on Scott? That was the end of Scott.
Yeah.
Being supportive of Scott.
No, it wasn't. That was the final draw. Let's put it that way. It wasn't.
Okay, and when that happened, the family made a decision to shut the volunteer center. Isn't that correct?
I don't know exactly how that happened.
The volunteers shut. The police came on the 5th. I'm trying to get the dates right.
Yeah.
I think it was the 15th. I think Sharon testified it was on the 15th.
Yes, it was.
Then they come on the 15th. There's a decision to be made about the volunteer center, and it shut down within a couple of days, correct?
Yes.
Okay, now during that time before the volunteer centers shut down, Scott is going to the volunteer center on an almost a daily basis, is he not?
Very early. Here again, I didn't see much of Scott, to be honest with you. Hardly most of the time. We did have a little stretch there when we got together as families and everything, but...
Well, his family was at the volunteer center quite a bit.
All the time, yes they were.
And Scott would open up, as far as you know, the volunteer center on a daily basis.
As far as I know, either him, his parents. We had also other people that would open it too.
Okay, and his family and Scott were actively there trying to promote the search for Lacey. Isn't that correct?
Yes, they were, yes.
Okay, and once the volunteer center is shut down, then the focus, at least at that point, became the police were trying to get or provided recording equipment to Sharon to try to get incriminating statements out of Scott. Isn't that correct?
Yes, somewhere along in there.
Okay, and then the police also tell you that they had on the 15th, they had information about an insurance policy, about that Scott had taken out on Lacey.
I heard about it. I don't know if it was the police. I don't know where I heard it.
You later found out?
I think Sharon did.
You later found out that that was false?
I still don't know.
You still don't know.
No, I don't know. They have insurance? I don't know.
They gave you, they said, look, he's got a girlfriend. We got an insurance policy. Didn't they kind of lay out?
No, they didn't. They didn't do that.
Huh?
No, they didn't do that.
Do you remember who the police officers who were there?
What? Oh,
When? On the 15th.
I believe it was Detective Bulmer, and I can't remember the other. Short?
Was it Bercini?
I think it was Bercini or Grogan. To be honest, I can't remember.
Okay. And when did they deliver the Radio Shack items to you, to the family, to start taping Scott?
That's why I never won an argument with Sharon. She remembers dates and times a lot better than I do. I can't tell you.
Let me show you. It states 1:16 there. They went to Radio Shack.
Yes, okay.
10:30.
Okay.
Does that refresh your recollection?
Sure, yes.
Okay. Does it refresh your recollection that the day after they showed you the pictures, they provided you with some taping devices to tape Scott?
Yes.
And that was the 16th? That was the 16th of January, the phone message that you left for Lacey on the 24th. Do you know approximately what time that was?
I think it was around 3:30, 4 o'clock, somewhere around there.
When you got home from fishing, can you give me a more precise time as you can, as when that was? I think you...
3 o'clock, somewhere around 2:30, 3.
And Sharon was home?
I can't remember. It might have been, later. I have to admit, I don't worry about times as much as everybody else but that's just the way I am.
Okay.
I will from now on, but...
Thank you. I have no further questions. Redirect by Rick DeStasso. Mr. Gransky, we talked about fishing and things. What hobbies were you aware that Scott Peterson was involved with? What hobbies did he talk to you about?
I know you know.
You know what?
Golf was his main love, I believe. He liked to go fishing, hunting.
How many times did he talk to you about golf, or do you remember him mentioning golf?
All the time. They used to go over to Carmel, and he brought me back a golf hat. I got a golf hat that says Golf Man on it. I'm not a golfer.
How many times total do you think he talked to you about fishing?
Well, I know we talked about it, but because I like to fish. But times like, I don't know, 8, 10, probably more. I don't know.
And you said hunting?
Yeah.
What Mr. Garagos asked you, he said that at one point, I think you told the police or something about that he was a very serious and focused person, not real emotional.
Right. I've never seen him lose control. He was always in control of himself and his emotions.
At the times that you saw him.
Right.
So if he had called a woman named Sean Sibley and was crying and hysterical, saying on December 6th that he lost his wife, that would have been behavior that you had not seen.
I think it would be understandable, but I hadn't seen it, no.
And did you see him do that type of behavior at any time after Lacey went missing?
What? Do what?
Crying hysterically. I lost my wife, that type of thing.
Not hysterical, no. No, I saw him a couple of times.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I saw him a couple of times.
A couple of times, and then that's where it ended. Go ahead. Now, when I hear this, when this first happened on the 24th, you didn't think that Scott Peterson was involved in this?
No, I thought Lacey was out shopping or something.
Okay, and Mr. Garagos asked you a question about, you or I think something to the effect that you didn't think until you were shown the pictures of him with Amber, and your answer was, well, that was the final straw. But what were the straws that were leading up to that final straw?
Well, after that statement that I made in front of the police that I felt bad about it, but he wouldn't talk to me then. And I remember Brent and Sharon and we were we were actually sleeping. I was sleeping in a chair in the living room and they were on the couch. And I might have mentioned to them, I said, he won't talk to me. And Brent said to me,
Objection, hearsay. Sustained. Okay, so he wouldn't talk to you. That was part of it?
right.
Were there other things in his demeanor in the weeks leading up to January 15th?
I never saw much of I never saw much of time that I mean, what do you mean the 15th of January?
Right, that was the day the police showed you the pictures of Amber.
Right.
You said that was the final straw.
Yeah.
So you said he wouldn't talk to you.
Oh, here again. We had a press everywhere and people everywhere, and I believe we were hearing that he wanted to sell the car and Lacey's car, and the fact that he wouldn't talk to me, and that was the final straw, the pictures.
Nothing further, Your Honor. Recross. On January 16th, after you were shown the pictures and given the recording equipment, there was a phone call that was made the same day, right?
Yes.
Okay, and in that phone call, you said, if you've got anything left in you, Scott, you better tell us where she is. Do you remember saying that?
Yep.
And he said, I wish I knew, Ron. We all want her back. Isn't that what he told you?
Yes.
And you said, no. The police are going to be seeing you before long, Scott. Your world is crumbling.
Yep.
And he said, my world? Objection, Your Honor. This is inadmissible hearsay. The defendant's statement. I don't think so. I think it goes to his state of mind. That's one of the big issues in this case. Overruled. My world is done without Lacey and my child. We all want her back, and I'm sorry you guys feel I had something to do with it, but the only important thing is getting her back.
I don't remember him saying that. I'm not saying he didn't. I'm saying I don't remember him saying that.
Okay, let me see if this refreshes your recollection. And this is 17784 of the Bates.
It says Peterson said that. I don't remember him saying that.
Right, I'm asking you, does that refresh your recollection?
I'm saying no, it doesn't.
You don't remember him saying, my world is done without Lacey?
I don't remember him saying that.
You don't remember him saying that we all want her back? I'm sorry, you guys.
I don't remember him saying that. I was mad, too, at that time.
Okay, now did you also say in your response to Mr. Tastasso's questions that you'd never seen him hysterical, but you had seen him cry, you had seen him being emotional after Lacey was missing, isn't that right?
Yes, I had.
On more than one occasion.
Yes.
He was extremely emotional, especially for him, because you had never seen him emotional at all before that.
That's true.
I'm sorry, I should have asked this before I came back up again. The prosecutor asked you about all these lakes that are all around there and the fishing, and I'm not a fisherman, so I don't know the lakes there. Is this one of the reasons that you had to go to some of the lakes, is that they're relatively private and you say you can look at nature and clear your head?
Yeah.
And some of these places, as you indicated to the jury, you don't want people to know about because...
No.
Because, I mean, half jokingly...
Half jokingly, right.
But there's some truth to that, isn't there?
To my particular fishing spots that I fish.
Okay, and these places are all closer to Modesto.
A lot closer.
And they're all fairly private, fairly out of the way.
Yeah, people in the area know where they are. I mean, from the area.
Wouldn't it, I mean, if you wanted to dump a body, wouldn't it be easier to dump it in a spot that was fairly private and out of the way, as opposed to driving 90 miles where it's a busy marina and boats and people living all over the place? Objection. It's argumentative. Sustained. You heard Sharon's testimony yesterday that she was unaware that Lacey wanted to have those city closed off the trail access at Covina Avenue. Objection, Your Honor. That misstates the testimony. I think it was the street, not the trail. The testimony from... She was unaware of the Covina access. She was aware of the closing off of Encina. That's what her testimony was. Right, right. I'm assuming a fact, not in evidence. It's assuming a fact, not in evidence. I'm asking. Hold on, everybody hold on. My understanding of her testimony yesterday was that Lacey Peterson was an activist with respect to extending Encina Avenue, but had nothing to do with the folks in the park. That was her testimony. That's what Sharon said. That she was unaware of anything to do with the trail, and that trail comes off of Covina. Isn't that correct?
Right.
Okay. Have you ever seen this email? A Modesto PD email talking about closing off the trail at Covina and that Mrs. Peterson wanted to because of the transient problem there.
No,
Did you see this email?
there's not a transient problem. I don't know where you are getting that from, but the mayor's council people go to that park. It's a nice park.
Are you telling me that you've never seen these emails?
I might be telling you that. I can't read it. I need my other glasses. No, I don't think I do remember seeing that.
Okay, I should mark these for reference. Yes, they are. Defense next in order, which I believe you want them G1 and 2? Yes. G1 and 2 and their emails. I'll put G2 is from Bob Ford to Dwayne Frederick, and that G1 is from Bob Ford to Ron Cloward. Okay. I have no further questions. Thank you, Mr. Gransky. And any other questions, Mr. DeStasso? I don't have anything. Okay. Oh, let's see. That was good. Thank you, Margot. Yep. Let's see who's here. So, hi, Nan. He wanted to sell her car very badly. Yeah, right? And that made them kind of suspicious, right? He wanted to sell her car. Okay. Hi, Frenchie Mama.
Great job. Great job, Margot. Bravo.
Now it's your turn, Sharon.
I know, so. Reading.
Who's next? Who's the next one? The next one is Lacey's brother.
I'm trying to get this off my screen to get back to the start here.
Oh. Does anyone even want to read Lacey's brother? Sharon? Nicole? I thought I heard Nicole come on.
I don't see her
Did
on
anybody
here.
let her in the office? I mean, in the Slack? Because I saw her trying to come in. Nicole,
The only one who
are
let
you
her
there?
in would have been Lark.
I think Lark didn't let her in. I don't think Sharon let her in either.
Sharon's not a co-host.
Oh, she's not.
No, there's only Lark and you.
Oh, my goodness. Lark. Nicole, try to come in again.
She was in chat just a few minutes ago.
I know, and she tried to get in when we were doing that. And then Lark was like, no, she's not coming in. I'm not letting her in. Scooter? Where's Scooter? Scooter. Scooter doesn't like us anymore, Rubbity Bub. She hates us.
I thought I'd be reading for a few minutes and Scooter had come.
Yeah.
To go Scooter, Scooter, Scooter. Okay. Who's the next? Oh, Lacey's brother, you said.
Scooter's having a tough time. Sharon's hiding. Sharon, I thought you liked to read.
But I don't know how big the transcript is. I can't see very well.
Well, do you want to take a look at it? The link's right in the chat.
Oh, I have to go in the chat?
No, in the little chat.
No, the chat of Zoom, Sharon.
Oh, in Zoom. Let me see. Which is it? The transcript?
Go down to witness Brent Rocha.
There's no transcript.
Yeah, on that link. You have to go to the witness first, and then there's a little link for the transcript.
I don't see.
Look,
Let me see. Maybe it's here.
Watch.
Let's see. Oh, wait. I think this is it.
Witness number 10.
Okay. And how far down do I go?
Here, let me see if this opens right up to it. Hold on, let me see this. Check out this link.
I've got it here, but just tell me how far
But
down
I just gave
go.
you another link that gives you directly to the testimony.
Oh, right. Hang on. Okay.
Does that bring it up?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So this is June 8th, 2004. And this is, where are we with Brent Rocha? Okay, let me just, there we go. Okay, so Mr. Rocha, what is your relationship with the victim in this case, Lacey Peterson?
Lacey's my sister.
And I'd like to show you what's been marked as People's number 14 for identification. Do you recognize who's depicted in this photograph?
Yes, that's Lacey.
I heard my name.
Oh, okay. I want to go through a little bit of just the family history. Did you grow up with Lacey?
In my younger years, we raised in the same household, and later I moved with my father.
And your father's name is?
Dennis Rocha.
And do you and Lacey share the same mother?
Yes.
And that's who?
Sharon Rocha.
And at some point in time, let me back up for a second. Who is older, you or Lacey?
I'm older by 4 years.
And at some point in time, did your parents get divorced and you and Lacey kind of went to two separate families?
Actually, both of us went with my mother at that time.
That's Sharon.
Yes.
And then you were saying at some point in time, you went to live with your father. When was that?
I was about 9 or 10 years old.
And Lacey would have been 4 or 5?
4 or 5.
And did you continue to see her even though you went to live with your dad at different points in time during the year?
Yes, there was weekend visitation. So we were either one weekend at my mom's or one weekend at my father's. So we would still see each other.
And did that continue throughout your life until the point in time when Lacey kind of grew up and went to college?
For the most part, there were times where it didn't happen every other weekend, but it was on a regular basis.
Excuse me. Okay, at some point in time, we're talking about this. Did you go off to college as well?
Yes, I did.
And what school did you go to?
Well, I started in San Diego.
Were you aware if Lacey went to college as well?
Yes.
Where did Lacey go to college?
San Luis Obispo, Cal Poly.
Now, since you were older than her, did you graduate before she did?
Yes, I did.
And after you graduated at some point in time, did you happen to go visit her when she was at college?
Yes, several times.
Where was it that you would go?
Well, generally I'd go stay the weekend at her house down there. She lived at a few different places at San Luis throughout her college years. So I'd been to all the different places she lived.
During that time period that you go to visit her, did you ever become aware of the fact that she had become involved with or started to date somebody by the name of Scott Peterson?
Yes.
And the person that we're referring to as Scott Peterson, do you see that person here in the room today?
Yes.
Could you point to that person, describe something that he's wearing?
He's wearing a tan blazer.
The record will reflect he's identified the defendant. During that time that you would go down and visit Lacey, did the relationship between your sister and the defendant blossom into something other than them just dating?
Yes.
Did they eventually get married?
Yes, they did.
Even after they got married, did you still continue to go down and visit your sister?
Yes.
When you would go down to visit with your sister, would you stay with them even after she got married to the defendant?
Yes.
What would you guys do when you would go down to visit?
Oh, we've done a lot of different things. I mean, we'd go to farmers market, we'd go out to dinner, we'd go wine tasting, go to a variety of different things, go to the movies.
When you're saying that we would, that mean Lacey, the defendant, and yourself?
Yes.
Are you about the same age as the defendant?
Approximately a couple years older, maybe a year older.
During this time period, did you also get to know the defendant when you were down visiting your sister as well?
Yes, I did.
And as you progressed through this, getting to know the defendant, so to speak, did you become aware if he was in college or not?
Yes.
And can you explain that to the jury?
I was always aware that he was attending Cal Poly.
Did he graduate from Cal Poly?
Yes, he did.
After the defendant graduated from Cal Poly, what did he and Lacey do?
Well, at that time, Lacey was living in Prunedale, I believed. She moved back to San Luis and they decided to open a business together. I believe Scott sold a business that his parents gave him, a packaging business, and they rolled that money into a restaurant.
Let me back up for a second. You're saying that Scott had a business prior to the business that he got with Lacey?
When I first met Scott, I think he was probably 24, or I was 24 as well, 25. He was attending college and he was running a packaging business.
When you say packaging, what do you mean by that?
Well, I believe they contracted with local people who need shipping to be like, for example, there was a company down there that produced hot sauces and something like that. They shipped them out to customers so they could use this company, actually put their product into packages for shipping purposes.
Now, you said at some point in time that the defendant sells that business and opens up another business with Lacey?
Yes.
What business was that they opened up?
The Shack.
Can you tell us about that?
Well, it was more of a beer and burger place for college students. I mean, I believe started it from scratch. It wasn't an existing place they bought, all new equipment. Everything in there were new cash registers, refrigerators, stoves, that kind of stuff.
Did it look like the defendant, since it was his money that he got from his parents at a previous business that was sold and rolled into the new business, did it look like there was a substantial amount of money that was sunk into this business?
Oh, I would say well over 50,000, maybe upwards of 100. I didn't know the dollar figure, but you know, restaurant equipment can be expensive. It was all new operation.
As this was progressing, it's just the defendant running the shack, or did your sister also get involved in it?
Oh, they both worked in the shack.
What would they do, if you could tell us?
Well, I wasn't there day to day, but Lacey, I know she had a lot to do the decorating and kind of setting up the atmosphere and kind of working in the kitchen from what I understood. Scott flipped burgers, and only reason I knew that is because he said he didn't want to flip burgers for the rest of his life. So I believe that's one of the reasons they decided to sell the business.
Now, during the time period that they had this business, Was he still a student or had he graduated at that point?
I believe he graduated, but he still had contacts with a fraternity down there that he was in. I think he was in a fraternity after he graduated. So a lot of those fraternity members would attend or would go to the shack.
Do you happen to know what kind of degree he had?
I think it was ag business.
When you say ag business, that's like agriculture?
Agriculture, yes.
You also mentioned that you only knew Scott was flipping burgers because he made a statement to you about that.
Correct.
What was that statement that he made?
Well, it was just along the lines that he didn't want to flip burgers for the rest of his life, so that's why they were going to sell the place.
Did he talk to you about whether this was hard work or not?
No. I don't think he ever mentioned it was hard, but I think it became something he wasn't interested in doing anymore.
So after you have this conversation with him where he says he doesn't want to flip burgers for the rest of his life, did you become aware of him interviewing for jobs up in Northern California?
Yes.
Did he interview for a job up in Sacramento?
Yes, he did.
And did you become aware of that particular job interview up in that location?
I'm sorry.
Did you become aware of that job interview up in that location?
Yes.
Now, do you have a connection to the Sacramento area?
I live in the Sacramento area.
All right, again, for geographic purposes, Sacramento is north of Modesto.
Yes.
What's the approximate distance?
60, 75 miles.
Did he, when the defendant started to look for this job, did you know or had this interview, did you know what type of job it was for?
It was an agricultural type sales position.
Something in the field that he graduated from?
Right, yes.
And you also mentioned that it was sales. Did you become aware that the defendant was interested in getting some type of sales position?
Not particularly. I think he was looking for any position he could obtain at that time.
Was he successful in getting the job up in Sacramento?
I don't believe so, because they didn't end up moving to Sacramento. They later moved to Modesto.
So after that particular interview, the defendant lands in Modesto.
Yes.
Now, when you say they, are you talking about the defendant and your sister?
Correct.
So do you remember the approximate time that ultimately the defendant and your sister end up moving back to Modesto?
Well, I think it was in the summer, but around 2000 is what I recall. I mean, give or take.
And during this time period, were you always living up in Sacramento?
Yes.
Did you have daily contact with them, or is it something that you had a little bit more infrequent contact?
It was more infrequent because of the distance.
And when they moved back to Modesto, were you aware of what their housing situation was at first?
No, not particularly.
Do you know if they were renting or if they owned their home?
Well, I knew, yes, they were renting. I had been there a couple times, but I didn't know they stayed with my parents for a couple weeks. I didn't know that.
All right, so as it progresses, they come back to Modesto, they're renting. You visited that particular place. Did you become aware that they were attempting to or had bought a new house, or not a new house, but bought a house in Modesto?
Yes, they were. I believe they were working out a deal with his parents where they could get some money for the down payment to purchase the house.
And when you say they were working out a deal with his parents, who are you referring to?
Scott.
So Scott gotten some money from his parents for a down payment?
Correct.
And were they able to get this money and buy this house?
Yes, they were.
The house that we're talking about is at the Covina residence.
Yes.
After this deal goes through, did you ever go down and visit Scott and Lacey at this house?
Oh, yes, several times.
So when you go down to visit them, were you aware of the layout of the house or what they might have in and around the house?
Yes.
Did they happen to have a dog?
Yes.
What was the dog's name?
Mackenzie.
Can you tell us a little bit about Mackenzie?
He's a golden lab retriever. He was always kind of a hyper dog, but when I was always come around, he would kind of bark at first until, Lacey would say, it's okay, Mackenzie. But he pretty playful for the most part. He was kind of protected when he first saw me.
When he was barking, now some dogs just bark because they're afraid of their own shadows, and some dogs bark for other reasons. Can you describe for us what you meant when he was barking? Objection, calls for speculation, there's no foundation, vague. Yeah, you can't break open a dog's mind. I don't know what he's doing while he's barking. All dogs bark, so I'll sustain the objection. Let me try it a different way. Did you view the barking as being aggressive? Objection, irrelevant, calls for speculation. Overruled. You can answer that. Were you afraid of the dog? Physically or mentally?
I wasn't afraid of the dog because I met the dog previously, but it was an aggressive stance like, hey, you're kind of strange. I don't know you.
Motion to strike, the last part, as to what the dog thought. No, but that's an observation. That's an observation of the witness and of the witness projecting as to what the dog thought. Correct. I'll let it stand. Now, during this time that you told us you had gotten to know the defendant, did you get to know the defendant's hobbies or his lifestyle, his enjoyments?
Yes.
And what seemed to be his most favorite pastime?
Golf, definitely.
When you say golf, definitely, can you explain that to us?
Well, I mean, even the first time I met him, we went to the farmer's market down in San Luis, and the first thing he did, well, not the first thing he did, but we stopped in, I believe it was a Copeland's, and he was hitting balls off in the indoor driving range. Visited down at Morro Bay when he worked at a golf course. I mean, that was his primary hobby. That's what he liked to do.
When Scott talked about things, what did he talk about most?
I wouldn't say he was always talking about golf.
Objection, Vegas to time. Sustained. Talking about the focusing end. After they came back to Modesto, we're talking about Scott's hobbies or his pastimes. Did he talk to you about golf on a regular basis?
I wouldn't say on a regular basis, but often.
Did he try to get you to go golfing with him?
Yes.
Did you ever go golfing with him?
Yes.
About how many times, if you remember?
About 4 or 5 times.
And that's in a 2-year time period that they were back in Modesto?
Well, not all within the 2-year time period. One time it was in Sacramento, which happened previously. But the other 2 or 3 times was in a 2-year time period.
Now, during the same time, let's talk about the entire time period. Did he ever try to get you to go fishing with him?
No.
Did Scott ever talk about hunting with his family?
Yes.
Particularly his dad?
Yes.
And did he talk to you about that as often as he talked to you about golf?
Not as often, but he did mention it.
And when he talked about the hunting with his dad, did he ever mention that he also went fishing with his dad?
No.
So did he ever talk about fishing with you at all?
Nothing about fishing.
Now, at some point in time, due to your age and the relationship that you developed with the defendant, did you talk about, husbandhood, parenthood, those type of things that maybe some guys do?
There were times he asked, how I was doing. Actually, we were golfing one time, and I think I was expecting my first son. It was pretty informal, nothing significant. And then there were other times he talked about certain events. If we were, for example, at his house, one time we talked. We were in his pool, and he was talking about him becoming a father shortly. So we had discussions about that.
Let me back up for a second, and we'll come back to that in a second. When you said that you were expecting your first child at some point in time after the defendant had been married to Lacey, did you start a relationship that ultimately ended in you getting married?
Yes.
And what is your wife's name?
Rose Roca.
Okay. And do you have any children?
Yes, I do.
What are their approximate ages?
1 and 3.
So try this again. During the time that your wife was pregnant, did you have contact with the defendant and Lacey?
Yes.
And so they were aware as your wife kind of progressed through her pregnancy
Yes.
and all the things that come with that?
In general terms, yes.
From what you could tell, did your wife and Lacey talk about this pregnancy, Rose's pregnancy?
On occasion, yes, they did.
Now, you mentioned that there was a point in time when I think that you said you were expecting or something was occurring, that you had a conversation with Scott. I want to go back to that. What did the defendant tell you during that particular conversation?
We were in the pool at their house in Modesto, at the Covina house, and Rose and Amy and Lacey were on one end of the pool, and my son and me and Scott were on the other end of the pool, and we were just kind of talking about life. We were talking about, not only him being a parent, but in general, how he wasn't doing good at his job and kind of had a lot going on. He's turning 30, and he's going to be a father.
Was he the one that specifically said he wasn't doing good in his job?
Yes.
And was he the one who said that he was turning 30?
Yes.
Do you recall in terms of the relationship of his birthday to Lacey's pregnancy?
No.
Do you know what the defendant's birthday is?
No.
He has this discussion with you. What was his demeanor like when he was saying these things to you?
His demeanor, he was down, kind of quiet. He was talking about how he was trying to interview new associates at his business and hoping they would be better salesperson than he would be. That was the gist of the conversation.
Now, you, during that time period that the defendant was married to your sister, did you become aware of how, let me try this again. Talking about Modesto, I'll be more specific. We're up in Modesto. They now have their house on Covina. Did you go into the house?
Yes.
Did you see how Lacey furnished the house?
Yes.
Would you say that? Could you describe that for us in terms of things that Lacey bought?
Furniture
or otherwise. Furniture or otherwise.
She had a nice household that she put together very neatly and creatively. She was a very creative person. It wasn't all brand new stuff. They had moved a lot of the stuff from their previous home, but she had what I thought was good style and pretty up with the trends, that type of decorative style.
Do you happen to know what your sister's degree was from college?
Ornamental horticulture.
During that time that we're talking about in Modesto, when they buy the house and these things are going on, had you just recently finished being a college student, so to speak?
Yes.
Did you ever think about how these things were being paid for?
Yes.
And why is that?
Well, sometimes my wife and I were visiting Lacey. We're like, how do they afford to do all these things? Get a new pool. I mean, we were scraping to save up for our house, and they were able to get into pretty easily new cars, not brand new, but fairly new, nicer cars. They had nice things. For example, like his bar was stocked with all premium liquors, and which cost a lot of money when you're in college. So things that I noticed.
Now, to move into a little bit of a different area here, I want to talk about your grandmother and your grandfather during the same period of time. Did one of your grandmothers pass away?
Yes.
At the time that we're talking about in Modesto?
Yes.
And which grandmother was that?
It was on my father's side.
It was on Dennis's side?
Yes.
So that would be Lacey's grandmother as well.
Yes.
Did your grandmother and grandfather have some kind of a business or land holdings that was part of their estate?
They had a family business at one time, which was a dairy farm.
All right, so just go through this. The estate that we're talking about that started out as a dairy farm in the Central Valley.
Yes,
Was it, if you could tell us, a big farm, a small farm?
it was probably considered a small family farm.
And when your grandmother passes away, what happens?
Well, at that point in time, they already were semi retired, where they moved to another location, already sold the ranch, and so they had their estate set up. So if something should happen to either one of them, the other person would be taken care of. So that happened, and my grandfather was not real cognizant at the time. So I became a trustee and looked after his needs.
Were you the sole trustee?
No, I was the co-trustee,
And who was the other co-trustee?
Robin Roca.
As part of your grandmother's estate, did some money or property basically pass into trust to help take care of your grandfather?
Yes, everything was set up in trust for his needs.
Also, as part of her passing, was there some kind of conveyance or some type of mechanism set up so that their property did come to the children or to the grandchildren?
The way it was set up was at the time of both of their passing, there was a bequest that was given to the grandchildren, which was their home.
And that was a house that was going to be put up for sale.
Yes,
When was it put up for sale?
I believe in November or December of 2020.
2002.
Pardon me, 2002. I'm dyslexic.
That's okay. So shortly before Lacey went missing,
Yes,
now your grandfather was living in the house, but because of his health needs, he had to be placed someplace prior to that.
in October of 2002, the trust, we moved him to a skilled nursing facility.
And after he moves, the trustees at that point, this time, felt it was best to sell the property.
Yes, to help preserve the assets, to help cover the costs of the skilled nursing facility, we were going to sell the home.
Was there also some, from your grandmother's side of the estate, was there also some jewelry that was passed on?
Yes,
And was it one piece of jewelry or multiple pieces of jewelry?
there were several pieces of jewelry.
Did you have much interest in the jewelry?
No,
Did you help the co-trustee give that to Lacey?
yes,
And was there a number of watches and earrings and things of that nature?
yes.
After, just go through this real quickly. After your grandmother dies, did you actually collect those items and place them someplace?
We placed them in a security box at a bank because we had an in-home caregiver for my grandfather for a couple of years. Someone who would take out to clean the place. We thought it would be safer to place those things in a security deposit box.
Did you go get those items from the safe deposit box?
No, I asked Robin, the co-trustee, to go get them and give them to Lacey.
And was that done as far as you're aware?
Yes,
So at some point in time, the jewelry is passed down from your grandmother to Lacey and Amy. Was it your understanding that they were going to kind of go through it and see if they liked anything?
yes.
So, and do you know what about the time period that happened?
It was the time period where we were moving my grandfather out of his house because the timing of this whole event is that, well, we're going to start distributing some of assets that are in the house. He's kind of settle everything right now. It was October, November, around that time frame.
Of 2002?
Yes,
After the stuff goes to Lacey and Amy, did you actually get something back from them at some point in time?
yes.
Can you tell us what that was?
I got a pair of earrings and 2 men's watches.
And the earrings, did you give them or pass them on to someone?
Yeah, I had my wife hold them. The reason we wanted the earrings was in case if we ever had a daughter, we'd have something of my grandmother's to give her.
All right, now during the time period, let me ask you another question of foundation. Was your grandfather's house actually sold? Your grandfather's house?
Yes, it was.
And what was the value it was sold for?
I believe around $485,000.
Now, after the house was sold, was this money actually eventually going to be distributed to the grandchildren?
There was talk about possibly distributing it to the grandchildren. There was provisions in the trust that no one would get anything until they were at least 30 years old. I've also consulted with an attorney, an accountant, and a financial advisor as to whether we should retain that money for my grandfather's needs.
So during this time period that we're talking about, October, November of 2002, shortly before Lacey goes missing, did you ever have conversations with the defendant about any of the plans to keep this money from the beneficiaries?
No.
Now, the three individuals that were the grandchildren, they are?
Myself, Lacey, and Amy Roca.
I want to move forward in time. Well, let me ask you one additional question. The jewelry that you got back from Lacey and Amy, that was for you and for Rose or for your ultimate granddaughter. Did the police at any point in time come to ask and see those to make an accounting of all of your grandmother's jewelry?
Yes, they did.
And did you provide all of that for the detective from the Modesto Police Department?
Yes, I did.
Now, let me ask you about that real quick, on a completely different subject. Did you talk to somebody from Modesto Police Department a number of times?
Yes, several.
And when you would talk to somebody, as far as you're aware, they would write a report about what you told them?
Yes.
And after they wrote these reports, did they ever give you copies of these reports to look at to see if they were accurate?
Yes.
And since you're telling them something that they're kind of writing it down, did you find mistakes and ask them to correct them?
A couple.
And as far as you're aware, did the representatives from the Modesto Police Department make those corrections and changes that you asked them to?
Yes, they did.
Okay, moving forward in time. December 24th, 2002, did you receive a phone call sometime in the evening about something involving your sister?
Yes.
Tell us what happened.
My wife and I were returning from church. I think it was around 7, and we went from 6 to 7. So we stopped by our place. We were going to go to other family members' houses. We stopped by to get hors d'oeuvres and whatnot that we were bringing. And there was 4 or 5 messages on my machine. And, that's pretty odd. And while I was there, before I got a chance to play the messages, Ron called and said Lacey was missing. And, I immediately came down there right away. So
Did Ron seem pretty frantic when he was talking to you?
Extremely frantic. I knew it was very serious.
So you get this call from Ron, and what do you do then?
I gathered some. I changed my clothes. I got some heavy jackets and flashlights, some gloves, and got in the truck and left.
Where did you go?
Straight to Scott and Lacey's house.
When you get to the scene, do you remember what time it was?
8:30.
So you get there about 8:30 on Christmas Eve?
Mm-hmm.
Can you describe for us what was going on at the defendant's house?
It was pretty surreal when I got there. There was a chopper overhead, so this light was shining down. They were already starting to do the infrared search in the park. There was probably 40 plus people out front in the front yard. My mom was screaming. Officers were there. They already had the house taped off. It was somewhat chaotic. It was very chaotic.
Now you're talking about your mom screaming. Was she yelling at someone or just
crying, kind of hysterical?
Did you happen to see the defendant at the time?
Yes, he was in his driveway.
What was he doing?
From my perception of Scott that evening was that he was just kind of staring straight ahead and not looking at anyone, just kind of like in outer space, just kind of looking and not really making eye contact with anyone. And not really. He was just kind of by himself.
Did you see members of the family try to approach him?
Well, I tried to approach him, and it was always just kind of, I don't know, it was just really a tense situation at that moment. And I don't remember, we didn't even talk. It was just like we had no conversation. I don't recall other people trying to actually approach him.
Now, when you say it was tense, I just want to go back through this. Up until the moment that you see the defendant in his driveway and approach him, were you on good terms with him?
Oh, absolutely.
And it was a relationship of kind of like you said, like age men, kind of talking about wives and fatherhood and bad things at work.
We had a great relationship.
So you walked up to him and you said it was tense.
There was pressure on the situation. I mean, there was a lot going on. There was a lot happening. So it was just, I don't know really how to describe it, but just, stressful.
Did he do anything to relieve that stress at that time?
No.
Objection. Calls for speculation. Sustained. Vague. Sustained. As the scene evolves at his house at this point in time, did you become aware that members from the Modesto Police Department were there and some detective was telling you guys basically to go home?
Yes.
And do you remember about when that was?
I'm thinking it was around 11:30. We left Scott and Lacey's house.
And this is after the park had been searched and this helicopter was flying overhead.
Yes.
And they basically told you to go home until morning.
Yes.
When the police department advised you to go home at this point in time, you've already told us about having flashlights. Was it fairly dark outside?
Yes.
It's 11:30 on Christmas Eve, so it's nighttime.
Yes.
Was it also cold?
Very cold. It was really cold.
So they advised you to go home. Do you and your mother and your side of the family attempt to get the defendant to do anything at that time?
Not at that time, but at some point in the night, I asked Scott if he wanted to come over at my house, at my mom's house, or if he wanted me to stay there that night.
What did he respond?
He said no.
So he didn't want you to go to his house and he didn't want you to come over to your mom's house?
Correct. And he also responded kind of like in a shocked way. Oh, you're staying the night here? Like, because he was surprised I wasn't going back to Sacramento.
And he says, no, don't come over to his house, and he's not coming over to Sharon's house. Objection, misstates the evidence. The testimony was he asked if he would like to come over to the house or he volunteered to stay at his house, and he said no. That was his testimony. Okay. After he makes the statement, where do you go?
Well, we went back to my mom's house. Well, first of all, Amy left her keys in someone's jacket. It was really cold. Everyone was sharing jackets that night. So somehow her keys got in someone else's jacket, which got taken over to my mom's house. I took her over to my mom's house to retrieve her keys. We stayed there for probably an hour, and I eventually brought Amy back to get her car at Lacey's house.
And just so we're clear about this, it's been described at your mom's house, and that's Sharon Rocha. Her house is a short distance away. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes.
And you said that Amy's car was parked over at the defendant and Lacey's house.
Yes.
Was it parked out on the street or parked in the driveway?
It was on the side of the street, near where the vacant house right next door.
And that's on Covina?
Yes.
Did you take Amy back to her car? Do you remember? Did you take Amy back to her car? Do you remember about what time this was?
This was about 2 a.m.
When you get back at 2 a.m., do you do anything at that point in time?
Well, we kind of stayed out front for a little bit. The crime scene truck or van was still there, kind of waited around, our stepbrother was there and his girlfriend, and we kind of just talked for 15, 20 minutes, determined that we were going to do the next day. Then I left and went back to my mom's house.
Did you try to find the defendant at that point in time?
He wasn't there.
He wasn't at the house?
According to whoever was processing the crime scene, they said Scott did not return.
Did you stay there or did you go back to your mom's house?
I went back to my mom's.
What did you try to do?
Well, we kind of all sat on the couch that night, and Ron was in the front room, my mom and myself. I don't know, we were just talking, trying to lay down. Obviously, we couldn't sleep, so eventually I went out later that night, about 3 a.m. I just went driving near the house.
Did you try and make contact with the defendant at that time?
Well, all the lights were off, so it didn't look like he was home or if he was sleeping there. There was really no one around. No, I didn't stop by or try to make a phone call or anything like that.
Now, you said before that there was some Modesto Police Department van that was in front of the property when you took Amy back. Was that van still there when you went back at 3 o'clock?
No,
So there were no lights on and there were no police presence at that time?
correct.
Throughout the night until the next morning, did you ever again attempt to contact the defendant to go into the house or knock at the house or whatever?
I called the defendant, but I didn't go back to the house. The next time I went to the house was about 7:30 in the morning.
And you said that you called him. When was that?
I think I called him probably about 7. As soon as it started getting light, said we were coming over, go search the park.
Did you go over
Yes,
to the house?
yes,
Tell us what happened when you get to the house. Now, it's the morning of the 25th.
yes. Scott opens the door, says, come in. He was just getting out of the shower. He had a towel wrapped around him. I waited for him to get dressed. He had, when I showed up there the night before, was dark. I had no idea where this park was even at. So he was getting dressed, getting ready to go, Mackenzie on a leash, and we were going to start searching the park.
Let me back up just to be sure. So he comes to the door. Could you tell that he just took a shower?
Yes, he was in a towel and his hair was wet.
When you got to the house, did you walk over to the house or did you drive over to his house on the 25th?
I drove over to his house.
What type of vehicle was this? Your truck, that truck that you're talking about?
Yes.
Where did you park your truck?
I parked my truck kind of on the street, but it blocked his driveway.
Was his vehicle and Lacey's vehicle still in the driveway when you got there on the morning of the 25th?
Yes.
Would you have not been able to get either of those two vehicles out of the driveway where you had parked?
No, we would not.
So Scott comes out, he gets Mackenzie, and the two of you go where?
We start heading for the park.
Which park are you talking about?
East La Loma Park, or I think that's the name of it.
How does he take you into the park?
Well, he actually doesn't. We get separated at some point, and me and Ron end up heading down into the park. And I believe Scott's with my mom, so I think he helps my mom move over to the neighbor's house. And so he actually didn't walk down to the park with me.
All right. Did you go down into the park?
Yes.
At some point in time, were you walking down into the park and Ron came to get your keys so that Scott can get his truck to go to the shop?
Yes, Scott, yes.
About, what was that?
I would say it had to be right around 8 o'clock because I know I started heading down into the park and all the patrol officers were starting to line up and start talking, figure out what they were going to do. They were all showing up right around 8 o'clock.
Did the defendant tell you why it was that he wanted to go to the warehouse the morning of the 25th?
He said he wanted to go get tape to hang up posters, flyers.
Did he tell you what kind of tape that he wanted to go get at the warehouse?
No, he did not say.
Did he come back with some tape?
Yes, he did.
And did you see him use that tape thereafter?
We both used it. We walked around the neighborhood together, just Scott and I, hanging the flyers with duct tape.
So this is kind of that silver gray tape that you pull apart?
Yes.
When he comes back with the duct tape, about how much time had elapsed from when he said he was leaving to go to the warehouse until he comes back with the duct tape?
Well, I don't remember the time frame because I was coming up from the park after searching it. I was down there for a couple hours, so it was about 2 hours where he was going.
Did you ever go to the warehouse from his house?
No.
So you don't know the approximate distance?
Well, I do roughly, but not because I've been there previously.
Do you know the general location where the warehouse is at?
Yes.
What's the approximate distance from the warehouse general location to the house of the defendant?
It would be a guesstimate. I would say 10 miles.
When you were done putting up these posters with the duct tape with the defendant, did you have some kind of appointment or time that you and the defendant had to be back to the house that morning on the 25th?
Well, it really wasn't an appointment, but I knew the media was coming out and we were going to be out for the 12 o'clock shoot. So we were trying to, well, it wasn't that we were trying to get back in time. We just happened to be hanging flyers and we ran out of flyers. So we headed back to the house.
And what time did you get back to the house with the defendant?
Well, I know it was before noon. I would say somewhere between 11:30 and 12, probably around 11:30. And like I said, the only reason I know that time frame is because that's when we first did the interviews.
And let's go through this. So you came back up in the park. You're with the defendant.
Yeah. Sorry?
When you come back from the park, are you with the defendant?
Well, we came back from the neighborhood from hanging flyers. That's when we came back to the house at about 11:30.
All right. So when you arrive back at the house at 11:30 time period, you're with the defendant.
Yes.
Do you see any media presence at that point in time?
Yes.
And did you want to talk to the media at that point in time?
Yes. Well, not me in particular. I was saying, hey, what should we do? We need to get the message out and figure out what we're going to do. And Scott said he didn't want to talk to the media. The only people he wanted to talk to was my mom and myself.
Did he give you a reason why he didn't want to talk to the media on the morning of the 25th?
No.
What did he do after he made this statement about not wanting to talk to the media?
He stayed in the house. I went out in front and with Lacey, two of Lacey's friends, because my mom couldn't do it. She didn't want to talk. And we brought the dog out of the backyard so everyone could see what the dog looked like and try to get the word out that Lacey was missing.
Now, your mom's condition, was she capable of talking to the media at that time?
No.
Did Scott seem to be upset and incapable of talking with the media?
No.
Now, maybe we can guess shy or something. He doesn't want to talk to the media. So let me ask you about that. Do you have any real experience with Scott getting up in front of a video camera and talking before?
Yes.
Did the defendant... hold on 1 second.
Can you tell us about that?
Where did I lost my place here?
Can you tell us about that?
I can't find it. Hold on. Oh, gotcha. Can you tell us about that?
Well, I mean, there's one time in particular at my wedding, Rose and our wedding, where he kind of took the microphone for like 10 minutes and gave a long speech and kind of had no problem, absolutely no, I lost it now.
No problem getting up.
No problem getting up and talking in front of a large group of people.
So you talked to the media on the morning of the 25th, going into the afternoon of the 25th?
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Did the defendant during that time period ever come outside and even pose for the cameras?
No.
After this happened, did you start to ask the defendant to do some things? For example, search for maybe to see if Lacey's clothes were missing.
Just started to question, hey, what was she wearing? You know, the last time you saw her, all that kind of stuff. Are those clothes there? That kind of stuff. I asked him about a few times about that.
Did he ever do it as far as you know?
He didn't seem too interested in pursuing that, checking into that. So no, he didn't he never let me know. I don't know if he did it, and he didn't tell me, but I'm not aware if he did.
Did you ask him that repeatedly?
On more than one occasion, yes.
And in any of those times that you asked him, the second or third or whatever time it was, did he say, oh yeah, I did it, or respond to you?
No.
Moving forward in time a little bit, was there a point where I believe it was this Sun Carrington Foundation that got involved?
It was arranged. I don't know if by them,
No, that you're
but
yes.
an associate.
That's me. You're yes.
Yes. Oops.
Okay.
Oops.
That's all right.
Yes.
I do that. And was it arranged? I don't know if it's by them, but an association with them, some type of vigil that was going to happen on December 31st?
Yes.
So on New Year's Eve?
Yes.
Did you go to the vigil?
Yes, I did.
Where did the vigil take place?
In the park.
And that's that Covina part that we've been talking about?
Yes.
Now, is this park, from your experience, is the area kind of a big park?
Yes, it is.
And at different parts in the park, does it have different names for different parts of the park?
I believe so.
Where exactly was it that you had the vigil, if you know?
I believe it's considered East La Loma Park.
East La Loma?
East La Loma. I'm not certain on the name. We just referred to it as the tennis courts. That's in the area where the tennis courts are.
And when the vigil started to take place, was there some place or platform in which the family was supposed to go up and sit?
There was a large trailer, or kind of like a diesel trailer. We kind of had chairs up there and a microphone.
Did the family go up there?
Yes.
Was there anyone absent?
Scott was not there.
Did you try to find Scott at the vigil?
Several people tried to find him, but they could not locate him.
Did you ever talk to him on the phone during, before, during, or during the vigil? During, before, or during the vigil?
When I was up on the stage, he called me. I believe he called. I don't think I called him. And he says, well, if people are looking for me, I'm going to watch the vigil down here with my friends.
Did he ever go up on the stage?
No.
I'd like to have Mark next in order 3 photographs, which I've shown to council. Mark them 24 ABC. Yes. It'd be 24 ABC. 24 ABC. Right. Well, the clerk's already prepared 24, 25, 26. I can do that. Do you want to do that? Overruled. I've been overruled. 24, 25, 26. That's all right. These are all photos of the park? Yes. Well, 2 photos of the vigil, and the 3rd is a poster of people at the vigil. All right. Mr. Rocha, I'm going to show you these 3 photographs and ask you to look at these real briefly.
Okay.
Have you had a chance to look at them now?
Yes.
Do you recognize what's depicted in those photographs?
That was the night of the vigil.
So 24, 25, that's kind of a shot from back behind the crowd looking up to the staged area.
Yes.
And the last one, I believe it's 26. There's a close-up view of some of the people that were there.
Yes.
And 26, people's number 26, that would be a close-up that includes your mother.
Yes, it does.
Let me put these up on the screen and have you talk about what's here. Do those pictures appear as they did that night?
Yes, they do.
Mr. Rocha, starting with what's marked as number 24, can you describe for the jury what's being depicted in this particular photograph?
Well, where the blue tent is, that's the stage. And can you see the podium up there? I see my dad on the left-hand side and Amy, myself, my mom, and Jackie and Lee. So they had chairs for all of us up behind the podium.
Now let me back up and go through this. The person that you're saying is Jackie. Who is that?
Scott's mother.
And the person that you're saying is Lee. Who is that?
Scott's father.
And this was this somewhat representative of that photograph, representative of the crowd that was out there that night?
Well, yes, it was a larger crowd, but much larger than that. But it was crowded like that, and everyone was grouped together.
Going to the next photograph, and if you can describe for us what's depicted in people's number 25.
I believe that's Jackie Peterson speaking at the podium.
And to the right, let me just go through this. At the bottom center of the photograph, there's a podium that's depicted, and there's a subject standing at that podium.
Yes.
And is that who you're describing as Jackie Peterson?
Yes.
And almost directly behind her and to the right of that photograph is an empty chair.
Yes.
Do you see that?
Yes.
To the right of that, there's an individual, and it appears to be some kind of jacket that's dark in color with a lighter particular sleeves.
Yes.
Is that Lee Peterson?
Yes.
Showing you the next photograph is People's 26. Can you describe for us what that is?
Well, that's a picture of my mom and her friend Sandy. And I don't recall the names of the other individuals there, but that was sometime later that night during the vigil.
Okay, let's just to go through this. To the right side of this particular photograph, is there an individual you're referring to as Sandy?
Yes.
Do you know her last name?
Ricard.
And to the left, the second person from the right of the photograph, who is that?
That's my mother, Sharon Roca.
Now, behind them, it's not very clear from the photograph, is there a big poster that was out there?
Yes.
And what was depicted in the poster?
A couple of pictures of Lacey. And as you can see there, Lacey Peterson is missing and how much the reward was. And there was a bunch of candles underneath the banner there.
Was there a pretty big media turnout at this particular vigil?
Yes.
And I can't say at what extent of the families were there, but was it broadcast and put out to the media that there was a reward being offered in the case?
Yes.
And what time was that reward being held, being told to the media?
At that time, I believe it was $500,000.
So there was a $500,000 reward being offered for the information for the return of Lacey Peterson?
Yes.
You can go ahead and resume the lights. Okay. In and around this time period that we're talking about the vigil, did there also become a time where the police would set up a command center or a command post so that the families had set up a command post?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
The police command post was down in the park. The volunteer effort got so large that we were advised we might want to move. The command post was originally going to be at the house on Covina, but it would be disruptive to the neighbors, so we found another location to accommodate everyone that was suitable for our needs.
When we talk about the command post or the command center, those are actually two different things.
Yes.
So to make sure that we're using the same terms, the command post or command center, let's use that for the police. They set that up in the park?
Yes.
And they were coordinating, from what you could tell, search efforts from either volunteers or professionals.
Yes.
Now, the other center, was this a volunteer center that was being set up or maintained or run by families and Son Carrington?
Yes.
Where did that end up being set up?
At the Red Lion Hotel.
And again, geographically, is the Red Lion Hotel next to the park?
No.
Is it some distance away?
Yes.
The park is a few miles. Is it a few miles from downtown?
Yes.
Is the Red Lion Hotel in the downtown area?
No, it's not.
All right, so it's even further than the downtown area.
Yeah, it's along a freeway, so it's probably 10, 15 miles from downtown, maybe 10.
After the visitor center or the volunteer center gets set up, do you start or do you continue to have conversations with the defendant?
Yes.
And at some point, do you talk to him about, or does he tell you something about him observing people following him?
Well, I said, how do you know who's following you?
No, you're up two up.
Oh, oops.
Yeah, it's probably a day or two.
Yeah, it's probably a day or two after we got the command center set up. It was probably maybe the 27th, 28th, around that time period. He said the media were following him and the police were following him.
Did he tell you why it was that he thought the police were following him?
Well, I said, how do you know who's following you? How do you know it's the media or how do you know it's the police? Well, I know it's the police because they have dark tinted windows and they're driving Dodge Intrepids or Chrysler cars.
And this was around the 27th that he was making this statement to you?
Well, actually, he didn't say Dodge Intrepids. He said Dodger Chrysler cards. That was his statement. He didn't say Intrepids. Yes, it was around that time period.
And that particular conversation, was there a later point in time when you would continue to have phone calls or phone conversations with the defendant?
Yes.
And after some events had unfolded and everybody seemed to be aware of an individual by the name of Amber Fry, did you have a phone call or phone conversation with the defendant about his mistress, Amber Fry?
Yes.
I want to talk to you about that now. When you became aware of the existence of Amber Fry and the defendant's relationship with her, did you call him, or did he call you during that conversation? Did you express some concern that maybe she being involved?
Yes.
Can you tell us about that and what he responded? First of all, did you call him or did he call you?
I called him first because the information came out in the National Enquirer. I said, Scott, did you see this article? He said, no. He goes, hold on, let me see it. And then he called me back and he went to the store to try to find it.
Did he ever admit to you about having a relationship with Amber Fry?
At first, when I asked him that day, he denied it. But then after, he admitted it, yes.
So at some later point in time?
Yeah, in that same conversation.
When he admitted to you about having this relationship with Amber Fry, did you express some concern about her?
Well, I was just trying to get more information about what was going on. Scott, how do you know she has nothing to do with it, you know?
What did he respond?
He said, no way. She couldn't have anything to do with it. She wouldn't do it. She didn't even know Lacey existed.
So after he explained to you that Amber didn't know that Lacey existed, did you continue the conversation about that, or did you kind of end it at that point in time?
Well, no, we continued because I was still questioning him. I'm all, how do you mean that she didn't know that she existed? We were talking a little bit. And he said, well, she didn't know anything about Lacey. I told her that when Lacey went missing, so that was like the first time Amber knew Lacey existed.
The defendant was relating to you that he called Amber and told Amber when Lacey disappeared?
Yes.
During another one of those conversations, did you again somewhat, I don't want to say be confrontational, but did you discuss with him information that you were starting to learn?
Yes.
Did you ever talk to him and kind of ask him about some concrete or cement that was at his shop?
Yes. Again, it was in one of those articles. They talked about cement anchors. I said, well, what's the big deal with that? Because this was the first I'd heard of it. He said, oh yeah, the police asked me about it. I said, I'm all, oh, they already asked you about this stuff? He said, yeah. And I told them, I use it to make anchors. And I think his response was to me, I go, there was only one anchor. He said, well, I used the rest of the cement for my driveway.
Now, going back to the Amber Fry conversation, he, from what you were saying, he told you that, now it's not true. And then he admitted that he did. Were you also present when there was some discussion about a photograph with him and Amber Fry?
Yes.
And can you tell us about that? What happened there?
Well, that night the families got together for a dinner, and he was saying...
The same night you talked about the anchor and so forth?
The anchor didn't come out until about January, whenever it came out in that article.
So this dinner was earlier?
Earlier, like maybe the first part of January.
Okay. That's you. The police showed me.
The police showed me a picture of me and another girl. It looked real, but he said it was amazing. It really looked like him, that someone out there is just sending those pictures of him out with another girl.
And so that was what the defendant said to you at that dinner?
That's one of the things he said.
Now, the police department at some point in time, they come and they talk to you. You already told us about the report. Did they ask you where you were on the 23rd and the 24th?
Yes.
And did you provide them with the information of your employer?
Yes.
And are you aware that they went and talked to them?
Yes.
Did they ask you to go out and show them the locations where Scott had been using that duct tape?
Yes.
And on the 25th?
Yes, they did.
And to the best of your recollection, did you go back and try to find the places where Scott had put up that duct tape on the 25th?
Yes.
No other questions. Okay. See how long this is really long. Maybe we should just continue this for tomorrow and play game or something. Let me see, 'cause let's see what the chat wants to do. Where's the chat? Hi, chat. Okay, I'm going to take a poll now for the people in the chat. Let's see. That was good, Sharon. Were you okay with that?
Really hard to do the man's voice, but yeah, I'll do another.
Let's see. No, that's just with the prosecution. There's going to be the cross. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Hey, Nan. See what the question was. Do you want to continue tomorrow and go to a new video game or something? No. Yes. No. Yes. No. Yes. No. So vote. So what that means is, do you want to do the cross-examination of Brent tomorrow? Okay, because we're gonna do bits of this every evening. And would you rather just have a little fun kickback, go to the real estate game or something, just for a little bit before we call it a night? Or do you want to stay on this? So if you say, do you want to continue tomorrow night and you want to do the game thing, you would answer yes, which the yeses have it right now.
Real estate game, real estate game, real estate.
Yeah, well, that's what everybody's saying. So everybody click on their votes.
Oh, I have to vote.
Yeah. How to vote. Okay, so we're going to do that. I'm going to put a redirect. Don't go anywhere, guys. And new people, if you've never played this game with us, you're going to like this. And it's going to be a wind down from this, because this gets heavy. And we've had a heavy day with all of these trials. Lots of very emotional trials going on today. So just hang on for a minute. And we're going to play the real estate game. We haven't played it in a while. It'll be fun. And you'll like it. You'll get to see homes in all parts of the country. All right. Let me go here too.
You're funny, Nicole.
Hold on. Go on.
Real estate, really fun.
Okay. And it'll redirect you right there, so you don't have to worry. be there. Okay, and now I'll just put the redirect. And Nan, come on, play with us. Okay. You really like it. So we'll see you right over there. Okay.